I've been a limnologist biologist for 15 years. I've worked with endangered species in remote wetlands, done emergency fish rescues, and ridden out hurricanes in field tents. But nothing could prepare me for the heartbreak I waded into that morning in Maple Grove Estates. It began with the smell. A noxious chemical odor hit me the moment I entered my backyard. My eyes had begun to water before I reached the corner of my residence. But as soon as I caught sight of the pond, all within me softened. The water, once crystal clear, was now a greenish, metallic gray. Dozens of dead fish floated on the surface, their silver scales glinting in the morning light in a cruel way. These were not typical fish. These were Nevada pupfish, one of the rarest species in North America. I had been raising them under a federal conservation permit as part of an endangered species recovery program. Out of the inhabitants who were living in the wild, fewer than 300 were left. And now, nearly all mine were destroyed. Outside the fence was Tom, my neighbor, pale, guilty-looking almost. He told me he'd seen something a little while before that morning, about 6 a.m. Our HOA president, Karen Hartley, had been in my yard, or at least over it, standing over my fence with what looked like a big pump sprayer held in her hand. She grumbled something, Tom said, about finally fixing the neighborhood eyesore and teaching me a lesson. I watched the color leave my face. When I bought this house 3 years ago, this large backyard was the deal breaker. It was perfect for my conservation project. I did everything right. State permits, wildlife department approval, a certified containment facility with filtration, aeration, and native plantings that restored the soil and gave biodiversity. Karen Hartley hated it from day one. She never called it a pond. In her mind, it was a mud pit or a mosquito swamp. She griped that it lowered property values even when I provided documents to show that conservation efforts like mine are given federal protection. She didn't care. Her campaign of harassment started innocently enough. Anonymous complaints of algae smells, citations for non-existent landscaping code violations. I spent hours researching HOA bylaws, writing responses, even attending meetings with printed copies proving that I was correct. But Karen took it up a notch. She started showing up on my fence line with a measuring tape, informing me my pond was too close to the property line. It wasn't. She took slanted photos from funny angles, making the pond larger than it actually was, and distributed them at HOA meetings as evidence of something. Neighbors told me she'd carried on for entire meetings ranting about standing water and public health hazards. I tried to be courteous. I invited her over to take a look at the pond up close. I explained the ecosystem, how my pup fish ate mosquito larvae. I showed her the permits, the federal authorization, the years of research I had been contributing. She scowled and said, "This is a nice neighborhood, not a damn zoo." Then she added, "If you won't remove it, I'll fumigate your yard myself." It sounded crazy back then, but there was something about her tone, that cold, no-nonsense conviction, that made me uneasy. So I installed security cameras the following week. Night vision, motion detection, cloud storage. My girlfriend teased me that I was paranoid, but HOA Karens don't quit. They organize. What I didn't know was Karen was not doing HOA law or property boundaries. She was doing chemicals, killing fish, quickly. The day I discovered the carnage, I wasted no time. I called 911 first, and then right away informed the state wildlife department. The dispatcher in the local calling area didn't quite understand at first. She asked me if it was a vandalism call or an emergency with a pet. I told her this was a federal conservation area and endangered wildlife had been deliberately killed. That made an impression on her. 2 hours later, an entire unit of the state's environmental crime squad was in my backyard. Project leader Dr. Patricia Reeves made on-site water quality tests. Her expression became solemn as she listened to the results being read out. The pH was completely out of whack. Worse yet, she discovered excessively high traces of copper sulfate, a pesticide so toxic to aquatic life that one needs a special permit to purchase it. At concentrations it was detected, it was immediately deadly. I worked while I called up the surveillance video. As soon as the camera feed came online, my gut turned. There she was, 5:47 a.m. Karen Hartley in her uniform purple tracksuit, dragging a commercial sprayer across my fence. The night vision illuminated the mist as she fed the chemical into every nook of the pond, checking on it like she was applying a damn coat of paint. Dr. Reeves watched in silence, then asked gently, "Do you know this woman?" I shared with them Karen's role on the HOA board and her decade-long feud with the pond. The investigators took it from there. Karen's crime was not simple petty vandalism or even cruelty to animals. Because these fish were federally endangered, her actions constituted several top-tier crimes: criminal damage to endangered species, illegitimate application of restricted chemicals, trespassing, tampering with a federally certified conservation area. The estimated damages are $53,800. That was the insured value of the fish, removal of contaminated water and soil, professional restoration of the pond, and lost research data. But the ecological damage? That could not be calculated. Some of the pupfish contained genetic markers that had been followed for years, bloodlines going back thousands of years, gone in 10 minutes. Karen was subsequently arrested that afternoon. I wasn't there, but Mark, another neighbor of hers, filled me in on the phone. He said she answered the door with her usual smug expression until she saw the officers. Then she turned as white as a ghost. They read her the search warrant and the federal complaint. When she showed up at the HOA emergency meeting, she tried to explain that her sprayer had been stolen, that someone must have impersonated her in order to frame her. When shown the clear video evidence, she changed her story. "I was just spraying for mosquitoes," she cried. "I didn't know it would kill the fish." But researchers found records that spoke volumes. She'd purchased the copper sulfate on the internet using her brother's agricultural license. She Googled for phrases such as "how to poison fish pond quickly" and "copper sulfate kill koi." She'd even posted on a horticulture forum using a hidden username. "What's the safest way to get rid of a neighbor's mosquito pond if HOA won't help?" She knew her job. Karen Hartley now stands accused of federal environmental crimes, penalties of up to $100,000 and more, and possible jail time. Her stint as HOA president? Over. Her reputation? Tarnished. But none of it will ever restore the 41 pupfish I lost. Justice is coming, but the pond will never be the same again. As soon as the pond poisoning hit the news, the outrage spread far beyond my own borders. Once the word had gotten around throughout Maple Grove Estates, the neighbors crawled out of the woodwork to share their own Karen horror stories. It seems my pond was not her first victim. She'd forced the Johnsons to tear down their children's playhouse because it was the wrong shade of beige. She'd instructed Mrs. Chen to level her thriving vegetable garden under some wacky landscaping regulation, forbidding non-decorative plantings. The stories went on, and with each it became clear. Karen Hartley hadn't just gone too far. She'd engaged in a multi-year course of intimidation and control. The court date came sooner than anyone had anticipated. Karen stood before the judge in an expensive suit, accompanied by a visibly strained lawyer who appeared to have been the one who got the short straw. Her typical smug self-assurance didn't survive long. Witness after witness was called to testify. Neighbors, scientists, wildlife officials. They spoke of how valuable the pond was, not just to the threatened Nevada pupfish, but to the entire ecosystem, to education, to researchers. And then there was the evidence. Security tape footage that showed Karen methodically spraying poison into the water at sunrise, captured in stark infrared clarity. The courtroom fell silent. Even her attorney looked deflated. When the judge asked her why she believed she was entitled to destroy a federally protected habitat, Karen mumbled something about preserving property values. The judge did not flinch. His ruling was direct and devastating. Karen was ordered to pay $53,800 in restitution for the fish, habitat damages, and research lost, and $20,000 in environmental fines. She was sentenced to 200 hours of State Wildlife Agency community service and 3 years of probation. A second infraction would mean doing time in jail, but sentencing by the court was only the beginning. The same week, the HOA board held an emergency vote. The unanimous vote to remove Karen as president came at the expense of even her longtime supporters. The aftermath didn't stop there. Her employer, a green sustainability business model real estate firm, cut their ties in one fell swoop. The state revoked her brother's agronomy license upon learning he allowed her to purchase restricted chemicals illegally. And her beloved country club? They definitely diplomatically requested she resign her membership. And then there was the offer no one could have foreseen. The State Wildlife Division, recognizing the ecological benefits of my conservation work and Karen's seriousness of assault, took a groundbreaking action. They designated my property as an official wildlife refuge. That made all the difference. Now, not only was my pond federally protected forever, but no one, not even the HOA, could disturb the land anywhere within 100 feet of the water. No landscaping changes, no chemical treatments, no construction, not without direct government approval. Karen's efforts to destroy my pond had accidentally made it invulnerable, and with the restitution funds, I rebuilt larger and better. The new pond was deeper and larger, equipped with high-tech filtration. A 10-foot privacy fence with anti-tamper parts was installed. Motion-sensitive cameras and floodlights patrolled each corner. A part-time researcher from the wildlife department even had an office on the premises. The old, modest backyard project evolved into a model conservation project. School groups began scheduling field trips. Textbooks for conservation students featured photographs of the site. Scientists hailed it as a microhabitat success story. Every new generation of pupfish was a miracle, an infinitesimal, shining victory over stupidity and brutality. And Karen, she observed it all from behind a curtain. A restraining order prevented her from coming within 50 feet of my property, which meant she couldn't even use her own back patio. I'd occasionally catch a glimpse of her at the window, watching school buses unload excited children. The very pond she tried to erase had become the pride of the community, and a national example of backyard conservation done right. But the actual poetic justice was when she was serving her community service. She was sent to the same wildlife center she had once blown off as nonsense, where Karen slaved away, cleaning fish tanks. At first she griped plenty about the smell, the water, the job. But later, something clicked. Her manager told me that she quieted down, less of an argumentative attitude. She even started inquiring about the animals. And when her 200 hours were complete, she wasn't requesting to leave. She volunteered to remain. During the final HOA meeting prior to her formal ousting, Karen stood at the podium she once occupied as if it were a throne. Her voice trembled as she tried to justify what she'd done. She'd merely been trying to protect neighborhood standards, to maintain property values. But when one individual got up and asked, "How does killing endangered fish protect anything?" she was reduced to silence. The vote to remove her was held in secret, but neighbors said one by one their vote out loud. When the tally came in, 43 votes for removal. None against, Karen visibly staggered. 43, one for every pup fish she'd killed. When she was taken away from the podium, she looked back over her shoulder at me. I braced myself for one final glare of defiance, but what I saw was different. Not rage, not malice, simply defeat. She opened her lips, maybe to say sorry, maybe to clarify, but nothing came out. She walked away from the meeting and didn't return. Her terror reign was over, thwarted not by rebellion, but by her own ego. The new HOA president's first act was to reverse all of Karen's arbitrary rules. The Johnsons revamped their playhouse, this time in stunning rainbow colors. Mrs. Chen revived her garden, now full of heirloom tomatoes and award-winning peppers. The entire neighborhood breathed more easily, more freely, as though the storm had finally blown over. At its center, my pond shone, not just with water, but with strength. 6 months later, I received a letter from the government prosecutor. Karen had done her time, but she'd done something I wasn't anticipating. She donated another $10,000 to the Nevada Pupfish Conservation Fund. Attached was a handwritten letter. I finally see what I almost destroyed. I never replied. Some bridges, especially poison bridges, aren't rebuilt, but I did see that she continued volunteering at the Wildlife Center. Maybe she did change, or maybe she just needed something to do since she couldn't boss around the neighborhood anymore. Either way, the fish were okay. The pond was secure, and Karen Hartley would never again exercise dominion in an HOA. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to erase my pond, Karen ensured its protection forever. That patch of water in my backyard is now a legacy, a haven, a federal refuge. Long after I'm gone, the pupfish will still be swimming, blissfully unaware of the angry woman who once tried to wipe them out with a garden sprayer and a heart full of petty hatred. And as I stood watching the newest generation zigzag between the reeds on a quiet summer evening, I thought of sending Karen a picture, not to brag, but to remind her what made it. And I thought of how she appeared when the verdict was read by the judge. That shocked realization that her self-appointed power meant nothing in the face of federal law. That day, that accounting, was more valuable than any photograph could ever hope to be. Karen had learned the most expensive lesson of her life. You don't just owe money when you drive endangered species to extinction. You owe the future. And that sort of debt, it can never be repaid. If you believe no one, not even an HOA president, is above the law, hit that like button. Share this story with someone who cares about wildlife, justice, or ever had to deal with a neighborhood tyrant. And if you have your own HOA horror story, leave it in the comments. I read each and every one. Subscribe for more true life tales of justice that show how one voice, with the truth on your side, can defend an entire community.